This video is a review of fraction operations. So we'll start with multiplying fractions, then we'll go to dividing fractions, adding fractions with unlike denominators, and then subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. So let's start with multiplying fractions. These steps should be recorded on your sheet. Multiplying fractions, step 1, multiply the numerators. Step 2, multiply the denominators. Step 3, simplify if necessary. So let's do this example together, 3/4 times 2/3. So the steps were, first of all, multiply the numerators. So my numerators are 3 and 2, so 3 times 2 will give me 6. Step 2, multiply the denominators, so 4 times 3. My denominators are 4 and 3, so 4 times 3 will give me 12. And then step 3 was to simplify if necessary. I know I need to simplify because there is something that 6 and 12 have in common. So I'm going to simplify 6/12 or reduce 6/12 using my greatest common factor, which is 6. So divide both the numerator and denominator by 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 12 divided by 6 is 2. So 3/4 times 2/3 in simplest form is 1/2. So again, simplify if necessary. Next, let's review dividing fractions. For dividing fractions, you can follow the rule keep, change, flip. We'll refer to it as KCF, keep, change, flip. So keep the first fraction, change division to multiplication, and then flip the second fraction or take its reciprocal. Lastly, multiply. So keep, change, flip. So let's do an example together. 1/3 divided by 4/5. Again, using my rule, keep, change, flip, I'm going to keep my first fraction, so I keep 1/3. I change division to multiplication, and then I flip or take the reciprocal of my second fraction. So I flip 4/5 to 5/4, just flip it. And then lastly, I multiply. So we just reviewed how to multiply. So I multiply numerator times numerator. 1 times 5 is 5. And then denominator times denominator. So 3 times 4, I know is 12. Simplify if necessary. 5 and 12 have nothing in common, so I can't simplify. It's already in simplest form. So 1/3 divided by 4/5 is equal to 5/12. So keep, change, flip for dividing fractions. So let's move on to adding fractions with unlike denominators. Step 1, determine the least common denominator, otherwise known as the LCD. Step 2, make equivalent fractions using the LCD. Step 3, add the numerators, keep the denominator, so you don't add the denominators. 4, simplify if necessary. So let's do this example together. 1/2 plus 2/6. So first of all, what I like to do is, I didn't include in the steps, but I like to write it vertically, 1/2 plus 2/6, and then that's just going to help me keep organized. So back to our steps, determine the least common denominator. So my denominators are, I'll write it over here to the side, my denominators are 2 and then 6. So I count by 2s, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And then I'll count by 6s, so 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. And then I have to determine the number that they have in common, but it's the least. So one number they have in common I see is 6. So that's the least. They also have 12 in common, but that is not the least. So our least common denominator would be 12. I'm sorry, would be 6. I apologize, it would be 6. So since our LCD is 6, I'm going to make equivalent fractions using our LCD. So I'll set it up just like this. And then we have to find what number to multiply by to make both sides equal. So let's start with 1/2. Look at our denominators. I know that 2 times 3 will give me 6. So what I do to the denominator, I do to the numerator. so times 3. 1 times 3 will give me 3. And then do the same thing to 2/6. Look at the denominators. 6 times 1 will give me 6, so 2 times 1 will give me 2. And then after I make equivalent fractions using the LCD, I add my numerators, only my numerators, so 3 plus 2 I know is 5, and then I keep the denominator, so I keep 6. Simplify if necessary. This is already in simplest form, so our answer is 5/6. So let's finish our review with subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. Very similar to adding fractions with unlike denominators, except we subtract. So step 1, determine the least common denominator, the LCD. Step 2, make equivalent fractions using the LCD. And then step 3, subtract the numerators. Keep the denominator. Step 4, simplify if necessary. So let's do this example together. 3/4 minus 1/6. So again, I like to write it vertically just to help me stay organized. So 3/4 minus 1/6. And then my first step, I have to determine the LCD between the denominators, so 4 and then 6. So I count by 4s. I have 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, and so on. And then I count by 6s. So 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. And then I determine the LCD, the least common denominator. So I see that they have 12 in common, that's the least number. If you take a look, they also have 24 in common. That's not the least, so I want to use 12 instead of 24 to save me that step of simplifying at the end. So I'm going to use 12. I make my equivalent fractions. So let's take a look at 3/4. I know that 4, start with the denominators, 4 times 3 will give me 12, so 3 times 3 will give me 9. And then 6 times 2 will give me 12, so 1 times 2 will give me 2. And then I subtract the numerators. So only subtract the numerators. 9 minus 2 I know is 7. Keep my denominator, 7/12. Simplify if necessary. This is already in simplest form, so I don't have to simplify. So our final answer is 7/12. So this was a review of fraction operations, how to multiply, divide, add, and subtract fractions.